Good morning.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Oh my God, I'm so excited the fact that you're here. We were just telling these poor Americans here what it's like to have maple syrup.
There's nothing like it.
They have no idea.
No clue.
They're having this stuff that's like pretend synthetic maple syrup. And we're talking about like sap and drinking right out of the tree. And as a Canadian and a kid in middle school in Canada, I've done that. Did you do that?
I did that.
I think it was like at Black Creek Pioneer Village.
Pioneer Village.
You did the same thing?
100%.
Oh my God. So that's the craziest part about how we are sitting here in Boca. You don't live in Boca. I live in Boca. And I'm going to get you to introduce yourself, tell us all about your business. And then we're going to talk about how we had to come 3,000 kilometers. And for those people over there, about 1,700 miles to come down here. And we reconnect, right? Like people coming out of Thornhill. You're originally from Thornhill, you know, the little village that we thought was the bubble, that the end all be all to our lives. Fast forward, you know, why we're here, and the people that are listening, many of them are, you know, Canadians, Torontonians. Now it's gone to like LA, it's gone to New York, it's gone to 20 different countries, and they're thinking, what's the journey like coming into South Florida? So riff on yourself, please.
Yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So my name is Nicole Pekerman. I am the owner of Health Collective. I recently opened a weight loss clinic. I've been in weight loss, fitness, wellness, nutrition for over 25 years. I also had a corporate career. I was in the C-suite in marketing. So I was the VP of marketing at Tim Hortons, the VP of marketing at one of the biggest gyms in Canada. I was in the C-suite at Kraft Heinz. So I've managed some of the biggest brands, both Canadian and global. And honestly, through COVID, everyone has that aha moment. I was working over at Tim Hortons, not seeing my family, waking up at 4 a.m. I have 2 beautiful children I did not get to see. I didn't get to make lunches. I didn't get to pick up. And during COVID, I was suddenly at home making lunches, picking up the kids. I really enjoyed reconnecting with my kids during that time, especially at the beginning. And then I thought to myself, what am I doing kind of hawking fast food when I'm really into health, wellness, fitness, and I don't even technically eat my own product. So I actually created a fitness app. It was all about fitness motivation and creating challenges. And I exited that app, and then an opportunity came up with one of the biggest gyms in Canada, where I was the VP marketing. And most recently, being this transplant from Canada to America, I felt like I had one foot in, one foot out. I had a large team in Canada, and I felt a lot of guilt about not necessarily being there for them in the country, among other things that led to me.
We're going to get into those other
not
things.
Connecting and not staying at that job. So I said, you know what? What is the one thing that I have been doing for the longest that I'm the most passionate about? And that's health, wellness, fitness, weight loss. So I did open Health Collective, which is a weight loss and nutrition solution organization.
Where's that located?
It is in Aventura, but we actually have a brick and mortar, but we're also 100% online, and we also send medication throughout the entire state of Florida because our doctors are certified in the entire state of Florida.
So when I hear health, Health Collective, medication, the first thing that pops into my mind is Ozempic, right? And I think more people are on it than other people know. And then there's people that are totally about it, consider it like a miracle drug.
Yes.
I am, I'm scared of medication, especially one that you have to needle into yourself.
Yep.
But it seems to be hugely popular. So what specifically does the Health Collective do? And am I right when I'm mentioning drugs like Ozempic?
Yes, absolutely. So we do nutrition consulting. We do fitness consulting. I do coach people one-on-one, whether that's with or without the medication. I will tell you that the medication is truly amazing. So we do not have branded product. We have compounded semaglutide, which is basically the private label of Ozempic. So you have Tylenol and then you have acetaminophen, you have Ozempic and you have semaglutide. It's the same thing.
It's a generic version.
It's the generic version. And what I'll say is a couple things. Number one, you're 100% right. I have friends that I've shared with them that I started Health Collective and now there's this added bonus feature of having semaglutide in the family of Health Collective. And they're like, literally all of Thornhill is on this. Everyone you know is on this. No one wants to talk about it. And, I think that's totally good. What I will say is a few things. One is if someone's been looking to lose weight their entire lives and nothing has worked,
right.
This is probably the one thing that's going to work. Right. This is actually, it's not a synthetic drug. It's a glucagon-like peptide, which is a natural hormone that exists in your body. And basically what it does is it regulates your cravings. It makes you feel full longer. And this specific medication makes the food stay in your tummy longer so that you are full. So your cravings are reduced, you're feeling full, and as a result, you lose weight. What I also say to so many people who are like, oh my God, if I go off of it, I'll just gain back the weight. Yes. If you go back to eating 7,000 billion zillion fulfillion calories right. and you don't work out, that is what happens. But if you take the journey seriously and you really want to make the change and you want it more than you fear it, you will stick to those new habits that you've learned through the journey of taking this medication, and you will naturally stay at a new baseline weight that your body has become accustomed to. So everyone has a baseline weight. This medication actually reduces the baseline weight to a new lower baseline, and that's kind of where you keep it. Up, down fluctuations, bloating, water weight, 5-10 pounds, yes. But I have patients losing hundreds of pounds, literally.
Are they losing the wrong or right weight?
That's a great question.
Yeah,
that's
because
a great question.
I hear a lot of things. Obviously, when we're on your weight loss journey, whether with a supplement or a medication, you're going to be losing muscle mass, and as you get older, that muscle mass is going to be just atrophy. Like it's going to happen regardless, right? Yes. And I was listening to funny enough, oddly, a podcast with Joe Rogan and Peter Attia recently, and Peter Attia is, I think, one of the promoters or owners of AG1. It's something I drink on a daily basis. But then he gets into Ozempic specifically, and what they do is they do the DEXA scans, like the actual scans where it's immersed in water. And to backtrack a little bit, you talk about fitness. I used to own a couple of locations of fitness studios. I had one. I lost my shirt on it because of our wonderful government in Canada who decide who gets to live and who gets to die as a business. We used to have something called an e-volt machine, which is like the in-body or whatever you stand on. It runs an electric current. But those aren't as effective. The DEXA scans that he's been doing pre and post people of Ozempic, in fact, they're saying that they got fatter. So they lost more muscle mass than they did actual fat. So they got skinnier, but fatter at the same time. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So there's a couple thoughts that I have on that. Number one is no matter what diet you go on, if you start at a calorie deficit, a significant calorie deficit, and you don't do any weight training, weightlifting, you will automatically lose muscle mass. That's the first thing to go. So whether you're on Ozempic or you're on a supplement or you're just losing weight with reduced calories, if you're not lifting or doing anything for weightlifting, you will lose a little bit more muscle mass. Okay. That is not different on Ozempic, on semaglutide. And the studies typically show that you will lose muscle mass, but you will lose more fat eventually. And what I recommend to all patients is no matter what, you need to be lifting heavy. And that doesn't mean like going to the gym and lifting 100 pounds. Right. That means getting some wrist weights, getting some ankle weights, and when you go on your morning walk, because you should be exercising if you're on any kind of health, wellness, fitness, nutrition plan, or in general, you should be moving your body. Sure. That little bit of extra weight will actually help with the muscle mass.
So here's the type of people that I'm going to assume are on Ozempic or something similar, and some are not. They are using it as a miracle drug. So they're not exercising. They're getting on this thing. They're losing weight. They're feeling better aesthetically. But I think that they're feeling poorly inside, because how can you not? They're losing muscle mass. Things become a little more labored. And when they get off of this thing, because it's not a cheap drug, they do go back and revert to the other baseline, like you mentioned, and they're unhappy. So it kind of messes them, and they think it's a hormonal balance. And I've heard like that term being tossed around, whether it's medically accurate or not. I have no position on it. I just mean like they seem a little more depressed because of it.
Yes. So my comment on that is I absolutely agree. I think you really have to be on it for the right reason. And I'll tell you, the physicians in my office and I don't prescribe for those who don't need it. We don't prescribe for those who want to do the semaglutide for vacation prep, lose 5-10 pounds, and then, go off of it. This is someone who has been on a journey to lose weight for a long time, who's tried a lot of things and who hasn't succeeded and is really looking for that long-term commitment to change their life around. For me, a lot of people do call it a miracle drug. It is highly effective, and that's why they're calling it that. But if you're not treating your insides properly, if you're not finding the appropriate nutrition, if you're not getting the appropriate protein and fiber and fat in terms of macronutrients, you will not feel good. If you starve your body, you will not feel good. So having this semaglutide, some of the side effects are you lose your appetite, and you have people who stop eating and then they feel like malnutrition. So I'm going to plug something. So please. I actually wrote a book. It's called Your Guide.
Why are you holding out on me?
Yeah. Your Guide to Semaglutide. It's on Amazon. It's on Kindle. It's actually a complete guide, because I have so many questions about, isn't it terrible for you? Aren't you going to lose all the weight and then gain it back? Aren't you going to lose your energy? And the reason I wrote the book was because of these questions, because in the book, I talk about what is the appropriate nutrition? What is the appropriate exercise complement? What is the appropriate hydration complement? What is the appropriate nutrition and supplement complement? Because you do need your B12. You do need to have enough fiber in your system, because there is delayed gastric emptying. So there are a lot of small details in this miracle drug that are required to assist in an appropriate lifestyle where you do feel good. People just want to inject it and move on. And that's not the kind of patient that will have ultimate success, because they will feel bad. Perhaps even they will get depressed. Perhaps, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, so I can't necessarily say. But they might feel down. And I think at the end of the day, if they're not the right type of patient, they're going to gain the weight back.
Wow, you're full of surprises. A book. I didn't even think we were going to hit up on this direction, but it's really hugely important, very popular. And look, and I am the quintessential dad bod. All right. I got this thing around my waist that I'm having trouble getting rid of. And I'll also backtrack to the fact that I don't really have any more vices left in my life outside of the fact that I eat my feelings.
Oh.
Yeah. And I'm very well aware of that, where I wasn't in my younger days, because it didn't have an impact. I was active. I could eat whatever I want. It didn't reflect anything. And then you get into like a couple of years, a couple of kids, and then all the leftovers of the kids and the junk food that they want that you're really buying for yourself, that you hope they don't eat all of it. And you mentioned something about, for those people who've had trouble losing weight, I think, and I know lots of them that exercise regularly, have poor eating habits. They don't do, and I want to know your take on intermittent fasting, by the way. They don't do any of that. I find that to be the most effective for me when I'm trying to kind of recalibrate. I actually just bought something the other day. I want to ask you about it as well. It's called a ketone IQ.
Yes.
And so like when your body goes into ketosis, which I have found the most effective way for me to kind of slim down a little bit when I've done, it's not what I eat, it's when I eat.
Yeah.
And I now work out through starvation, and that I really do tell you there's a certain point, like I get an energy boost.
Yes.
And so I wanted to try, and I've only took my first shot of it yesterday. So I don't have a stance on it yet. So I know for those people like you mentioned that have been struggling with their weight their whole life, I think going into something as Ozempic, as long as you, or I can't pronounce semaglutide.
Semaglutide, you got it. You did it. Yes.
In parallel to a lifestyle that is already on the path of trying it, but you can't get there. I think it would be powerful.
It's hugely powerful.
The people that I've seen have used it, and they haven't told me specific that they're like just using it instead of.
Right.
And I went to dinner with a buddy of mine. I was in Toronto last week. I'm flying back again, and I did lose a little bit of weight, and he's like, "Are you on Ozempic?" I'm like, "Dude, is that the only way people lose weight now? You can't just like be mindful of what you eat and exercise?" I'm like, "No, I don't." And I also know it's a pretty expensive drug, right?
Yeah. So the Ozempic, or the branded product, is quite expensive. I will say that semaglutide is not inexpensive, but it is significantly less expensive.
What's a comparison?
So, for example, like Ozempic would be $1,200 a month, for example, if not more, if not $2,000 a month.
Wow.
And we do it for $300, sometimes $250, depending on kind of a sale or a special or whatever.
Is it all right to ask if you're on it?
I am not on it. Okay. I'm not qualified. So I'm not on it because I have a normal BMI, and I am not looking to lose any more weight. Right. So the interesting thing about me is I actually lost 50 pounds in my younger years. Wow. So for those listening in the audience, I'm very short. I call it vertically challenged. I'm 5'2", and 50 pounds on me was a significant amount.
Sure.
This was when I was a lot younger. My journey was I was a dancer, ballet. I danced 5 to 7 times a week. My Russian immigrant parents said, "You will not be prima ballerina. That's it, finished. You will go to school and study to be doctor." Anyways, so there ended my dance career, but there did not end my appetite. So I was eating like I was dancing 7 days a week, but I wasn't. And suddenly my dad very gently said, "You know, you're getting a little chubby." And I was like, "Oh, shit."
How do you say that gently to a girl?
I mean, honestly, he changed my life for the better. I am eternally grateful that it was him and it wasn't someone who made fun of me.
How old were you when you heard that from him?
I was 14, 15.
Did you resent him for it?
Not at all. Not at all. He was like, "Listen, kid," he called me kid. He said, "Kid, I love you. And I'm telling you this because you need to hear it." And I was like stunned. But then I went upstairs and I had a look at myself in the full length mirror, and I was like, oh my God, where did this weight come from? It came on faster than I could even realize. And I was like, oh my God, I need to change. So what did I do? I went with my mom to Weight Watchers. I learned about health, wellness, and nutrition. So I started to understand what are the different types of calories, what are the different types of nutrients, and I started to work out. So I quit dance cold turkey. I was like, let's just sit on my ass if I don't dance anymore. Started going to the gym 3 times a week. Started going to the gym 4 times a week, then 5. This is not necessarily what I recommend to patients, to people I consult with. I work out 7 days a week.
Really?
I do. I work out 7 days a week.
But there's no way you're doing the same regimen. I mean, you'd be full of injury. You would have wheelchaired yourself. Like you. So
interestingly, I do a lot of very high intensity work.
HIIT.
I do HIIT. I run 10 kilometers on most days. I do solid core, I do berries, I do Soul Cycle, I do Peloton, I do boot camps, you name it, I do it.
You are an exercise slut.
I'm a hoe.
Oh my God.
Oh my God.
What a great way to honor yourself. Because all that stuff's really hard work.
So right? It's really hard work. And I'll tell you, when I became a mom, the mom guilt was real. I would beg my husband. I'd be like, Mike, is it okay? I'm just 30 minutes, just all I need. And then I learned that honestly, I was a better human. Sure. I love the adrenaline rush. The runner's high is real. I'm happy. I am healthier. I feel strong. I can bench press my son, who's 65 pounds. Wow. No problem. Like, I did videos during COVID because I was bored. I was like, let's see if we can bench press you, Mark. And like, I'm bench pressing my son. I'm doing like push-ups with my kids on my back. It just makes me feel exhilarated. So
what happens if you miss a workout?
I have never missed a workout. I gave birth to my son. He's almost 10 years old in August. The day after I gave birth, I went running.
Wow.
Yeah. So I'm clearly very committed. Sure. And you asked about intermittent fasting. I have been my joke is, and I'm sorry if I offend you guys listening. My joke is I've been intermittent fasting when it was called being anorexic. Like I've been intermittent fasting since I was probably 17 years old. When
do you eat?
I do a dinner. That's it. One meal, 6 p.m. If I'm going out with friends, I'll do like a 24-hour fast and go 8 to 8.
What about hydration?
Water.
A lot of it throughout the day? Is that what keeps you going?
Yeah.
Your body's probably gotten used to it so much at this point.
I've been doing it for more than I haven't. So
does your husband have the same schedule when exercise and the same outlook on it?
No. My husband sits. He does not work out and he eats everything. And, he is thin. It makes me so mad. I'm like, oh my God. And literally if he does, I do too. And it's so funny because if he works out for one day, he was like, yeah, I think I need to work out. Let's get a bench press. We got a bench press in the house. I have all kinds of other things. He wanted a bench press. So we got one. He literally used it once. But besides that, when he used it, suddenly the next day he's like buff. I'm like, what the hell, dude? What is this testosterone thing? Like, how are you like ripped in one day?
Easier than women, that's for sure.
Oh yeah.
Tell me something. Did your business bring you down to South Florida, or was it the other way around? Like, why did you decide to open this up here?
That's a great question. So it's a multitude of factors. So during COVID,
is that when you moved down here?
We escaped. We
escaped like us. Yeah.
So what we did I just lose Mike?
No, I might have. Hold up. No, I can feel. Okay, we're good. We're back.
Sorry.
I have had the same thing.
Cool. So during COVID, it was December break, and the kids were online.
What year?
I want to say it was like 2020, the first go around.
Yeah, March 2020 was the first lockdown.
So the following December.
Okay.
The following December was December of, I guess, 2020. My husband said, I can't take it anymore. Our freedoms are being taken away. We can't go outside. The kids don't go to school. I was at Tim Hortons at the time, and I was literally working 24/7. I had to redo Roll Up the Rim for the Canadians listening. It's like one of the biggest promotions in Canada. We shot it, and then I had to reshoot everything because of COVID. I remember being on the last production set before COVID's closure. I then got COVID. I was sick as a dog. Then I was the first shoot to reopen, and that was done in Montreal post-COVID. But then we escaped for 6 months. During those 6 months, we actually have a vacation home here in South Beach. We spent, running, playing, jumping, in the ocean. During the kids' recess on Zoom school, we'd say, let's go and jump in the ocean and play and, play soccer
and be human
and be human and see friends. Half of my son's class was actually here.
I know.
And we said, you know what, this is what living is. This is what it's like. And then we had to go home because our 6 months was up, and we went home, and it was terrible.
Horrible.
It was the RCMP was at our doors. We couldn't leave our homes. We had to write lists of people that visited us. We had to bubble. Like, what did we not have to do? And we could not go outside. If we went for a walk outside, we would be questioned. So it was really bad. And my husband said to me, we need to get out of here. And above and beyond that, my son was diagnosed with type 1 diabetes almost 2 years ago in September.
Is he on a pump?
He is on a pump. So in Canada, you need to be on needles for a year before you get a pump.
That's why I asked, because I know somebody who went through this exact same story.
We came here to the U.S. Our dear friend here is a pediatric emergency doctor. She made us an appointment with an endocrinologist, and I shit you not, we had the appointment. Less than 24 hours later, the endocrinologist herself called Omnipod, and in 20 minutes after the appointment, she called us back and she said, the rep will be calling you. You will have a pump tomorrow. And not only that, the technology is so far advanced that the technology that my son is on will not be available in Canada for 5 years.
I have to interject, and I want you to keep it going on this.
Go.
And let me tell you something. I'm so tired of having this ridiculous conversation about which healthcare system is better.
Right.
And when I had multiple times on this podcast, given my point of view, I had people rip into me.
God.
And mainly Canadians and stuff. So I'm not going to state facts on what I think is better.
Yep.
I'm going to let people draw their own conclusions based on what you just mentioned. And that's just a small fraction.
Small fraction.
And that that organically goes to like, well, if you have money, then you have access to these things. And I said, you know what? How about we strip away 20% of what you paid in taxes last year, just as an absolute number, and you call that your medical insurance. Trust me, it's not even comparison.
Nope.
Apples to apples. There's a great doctors, great facilities in Canada. There's a lot of things, but access and technology is not even close.
I 100% agree with you. Listen, like I love the Sick Kids Hospital. They helped my son when he was first diagnosed. I continue to
Sick
donate.
Kids is an amazing organization.
Amazing.
Yeah.
But I 100% agree with you. I mean, make your own conclusions, audience. Honestly, the technology is significantly advanced. My son would not be on the Omnipod 5 if he was in Canada. In fact, he probably wouldn't even be on a pump. And it makes his life easier. So my son was one reason, freedom another reason, taxes another reason.
Freedom. What did you mean by that?
My parents are from Russia.
So are mine.
So communist country. And slowly but surely we start to see a bit of a socialist society in Canada. Where, even small things like neighbors telling on you during COVID and having to report you if you had your mother over for dinner. That happened. Yeah. The police was called. My husband was turning 40 in Canada, and we had a front yard party.
I had a 40th in my backyard.
So it was in the front yard. We had a couple food trucks. We had some friends come visit. Our neighbors across the street walked out, looked at each other, looked at us, walked back in. And 10 minutes later, police was at our door.
Do you realize how absurd that would sound to an American and how normal?
Especially in Florida?
Yeah, right?
Yeah.
And the things we used to hear about people in Florida, I know you did. I don't know if you did. I did. I'm like, I used to get told that people are dying in the streets in Florida and there's COVID that's running rampant. Yes. It was so bad. The amount of disinformation via the mainstream news outlets in Canada.
Oh, yeah.
It was horrible. It was a constant drip of the same things that the government wanted you to hear.
100%. And this is an interesting point because the government wanted you to hear or not hear. What are they taking away from Canadians from even a social media perspective, right? This last bill that was passed. People can't even freely scroll their social media feed.
Bill C-18, you mean?
Correct.
Yeah.
Because they've taken away so much of the information. There are things that we send our parents, Mike and I will flip over an Instagram post and it'll say, on the other side, it'll say like this post can't be seen on Canadian media or something crazy like that.
The Americans that are listening to this, I don't think you can comprehend. There is a major movement, not only from Canada into South Florida specifically, or red states, out of California as well. New York. Right? And there's a massive movement towards that and into this. But in Canada, you talk about Russia, social. My parents were also products of the former Soviet Union. And I remember asking my mom, and so was my wife's, by the way, what do you think about our move to Florida? And my mom said, well, it's not exactly communism, but you can smell it from here. Right?
That's a great quote.
It's so true. Right. And those little encroachments that you mentioned, they seem like little encroachments, but they're massive leaps because there's so many of these little things.
Well, it's sequential. Right. And it's additive, right? So it's becoming increasingly challenging.
So what people don't know and how we connected is that we lived in a very small, tight-ish knit community in Canada that people kind of knew each other. And if they didn't know each other, they definitely knew someone who knew somebody. And that's how it kind of worked, the Thornhill bubble, right? And then we're on a WhatsApp group called the Renegades. And,
great name.
Right? To put it into context, I don't know how many people are on the group now. I think it's like 25, 30. And those are people that have moved to South Florida.
Yes.
From Thornhill, and we are just a drop in the bucket. To put it into context, we also have very similar demographics. We're all, in their peak of professional careers. We have young children. We had families and supports that we needed to leave. We left a very comfortable existence and had a lot to lose because we didn't feel like something was right in Canada. And if I wasn't sure about my decision, now I've been here for a year, about it then, I am positive that we made the right move now. And there are so many of us, and we reconnected here, and we all are singing the same song about Canada. Absolutely. And what happened here. Like, it is off. It is wrong. It is like turned into something that is unrecognizable to us. And for those people that are thinking of moving or coming down here, I think they're using the podcast as a resource for sure, but they're thinking the same thing. Now that you're here, how long have you been here now?
A year as well.
Right. What's it like a year past first day? Like, are you happy with your decision? Would you ever go back? I mean, what's your stance on this?
At this point in this moment in time, I would not go back.
Right.
We are happy. We are happy because my kids are happy. So my daughter is 12. My son is going to be 10 in August. And my biggest fear was, oh my gosh, they are losing their support system, like you said, their grandparents, their best friends since childhood. They were raised in the Thornhill bubble. They had friends from 6 months old where I was in mummy group with these other kids. Right. And I was taking them and extracting them from a very comfortable existence where they knew everybody and they had all the support to a place where we know nobody and nothing. And honestly, we picked Posnack as our school, came here to check it out. It was amazing. But my biggest fear was my daughter's 12 years old. There's mean girls. And my son knows nobody. And plus he has, type 1 diabetes, which can go up, down, and all around. And we need a school that's supportive. And honestly, I'm so impressed and so happy with the level of education, but also just the awesome people that embraced my children. These kids have embraced my children, and my kids are going to school and coming home with smiles. That's honestly all I want. Plus, yes, my son is in a better place medically here. So I don't think I would go back. I'm really excited about Health Collective because I get to do what I love and help people on their weight loss journey and kind of live their best lives. And my husband opened up his own practice here. So what
does he do?
He's a lawyer. So his law firm is called Corporate Counsel. So he has an office in Toronto, Vancouver, and he opened up an office here in Brickell.
What does he
downtown Miami. So corporate law, mergers, acquisitions, listings on any of the stock exchanges. There's a really interesting niche, and maybe he can come on here and talk about it more eloquently than I. But his niche is really all about American organizations that just don't quite fit the bill in terms of listing on the New York Stock Exchange or a larger stock exchange, but they do have all of the requirements to list on the TSX. So he helps a lot of American companies list on the Toronto Stock Exchange. Wow. And that number of organizations that want to go public but don't necessarily fit the bill for the, New York Stock Exchange, for example, is growing tremendously. So he has a special status with the Florida bar, and he has several U.S. lawyers and clerks working here, and then his full team in Toronto as well.
So it doesn't really matter where he physically sits. I mean, he can work essentially from anywhere, which is probably a saving grace for you guys when you wanted to move.
Oh my gosh, it's amazing. And what's interesting is that we were actually just talking about this on the drive here. I was on the phone with him, and before COVID, literally 2 years before COVID, we opened up this gorgeous, beautiful office on the Renegades group. Rev, she actually designed and helped build it.
I got to have Rev on this.
She's amazing. She actually named the Renegades from what I understand. So
she's full on also rocks. Like she talks to me about how deep down the rabbit hole do you want to go? And have you had your red pill moment yet? And
that's funny.
We've had that conversation. Like there is a moment where you kind of like tip over and it's so different here. And when you go back to Canada, and every single time I go back, I realize how big that divide is between the psychologies, right?
I'm going back this weekend. I'm scared.
Are you? I'm going back on Wednesday.
So I'm going back on Saturday. Tomorrow
Right.
because my daughter is at camp there, and so we're going
So
to
are mine.
Visitors
So is
Day.
mine.
Visitors Day.
Which camp?
Camp Walden.
Okay, my nephews went through all of Walden.
Yeah.
They were what's it called? Counselors there.
Oh.
Yeah. So they might even know. And my wife and I just spoke about this because my eldest they're at the JCC camp there. They were here and there, and my son is at hockey camp, and we're like debating about sleepover camp, and Walden keeps coming up, and we just wanted to know somebody. So when she goes down, but wow, what a small world.
It's crazy.
And we have to come down here to talk about commonalities.
Well, I was going to say, I don't know where you went to school, but I am shocked that our paths have not crossed.
I went to William Lyon Mackenzie in North York. I didn't grow up in Thornhill. I'm like a late bloomer into Thornhill. I moved there when I was like 22, 23.
Oh, got it.
I'm willing to bet that if we talk long enough, I dated some of your friends in my single days.
I'm sure that's true.
I guarantee you. Like, I would just have to creep on like Instagram and stuff like that. And whoever I'm willing to bet you that.
I'm sure.
That, that kind of happens, right?
Oh, yeah.
As until you find the one.
Absolutely. I love that. I love that. Yeah. So I'm dreading going back, but I was going to say, so Rev helped us build this gorgeous office. It was the most modern, incredible space. It was kind of like we were doing. It was called shared spaces, half WeWork, half Mike's office, and COVID hit, and no one came in, and the shared spaces thing didn't work out. So we sold that property, and then now Mike has an office in the same building, but no one goes. So he's like, well, I don't know what to do with this space. No one is going to work. Everyone's working remotely.
Right.
And I actually think the world has changed, and a lot of employers haven't caught up. I've, been talking to several different organizations, and, they've offered me positions, and I'm kind of like, I'm always doing a million things, just to let you know. I'm always like, I'm here, I'm there, I'm everywhere. So I had 2 different organizations ask me to work full-time in an office building, again, back to the 9-to-5 grind. And I was like, no, can't do it.
Right. Especially as an entrepreneur, right?
100%.
Like, so you're running Health Collective, you're an entrepreneur, it's very difficult to take that kind of individual who's willing to take the risks and the lumps and the bumps and do all the scary stuff and the sleepless nights, and then put them into, like, first of all, 9-to-5 box, but more importantly, having someone tell you what to do.
It's very hard.
I don't think you would do very well in that sort of environment.
It's very hard. Absolutely.
What would you say your biggest challenge moving down here was?
That's a great question. I think for the first little bit, it was the small things that kept me up at night.
Right.
So, I didn't know where I was. Where's the nearest hospital? Where's the nearest grocery store? How do I get a mortgage when I have no credit score in the USA, right? Like, we came and my credit's awesome in Canada, but I'm starting at 0 here. And so, just kind of fumbling and thumbling through all of the things that you need to do to start life again. You need to find new doctors, new dentists, stuff for the kids, where you're going to shop, where you're going to live, like all this stuff. I think that was the biggest challenge. And then I would say up until very recently, connections, right? It's hard to kind of insert yourself into a community like what we had before and be the new kid in town and, try and make friends and try and make connections. I'm a really social person. I left all of my best girlfriends back in Toronto. So, finding that network of like-minded individuals that you can speak freely with is not always easy. So probably those couple things.
Your sphere of influence, talk about your girlfriends. What did they think about your move?
It's interesting because I actually didn't believe it until we got the visas. My husband kept talking about it. And, we had a place here. So we're always in Florida, no matter what. I never believed it until one day he came home and he's like, got the visas. And I was like, what? My friends, they were sad. They understood.
They did.
They understood. I think some fight it. Some are still kind of, well, Canada's better here, Canada's better there. A lot of people said, you know, I was scared myself. I was like, I don't know what I'm getting into.
I'm still scared, by the way.
Yeah.
But I don't think that goes away that easily.
Yeah. I mean, I think people were supportive, and they also said, you know, what's the worst thing that can happen? You come back in a year if you hate it. And I was like, well, you know, that's true. What is the worst thing that can happen? So, you know, I love that I'm still connected to the most important people in my life in Toronto. I love that, you know, there are some people you don't talk to every week, but then you can just call them up and it's like nothing ever changed.
Picked up right where you left off.
Right where you left off.
Yeah.
And that's comforting to me. And also just, you know, broadening my horizons and broadening the circle. Like I did feel like I was in this Thornhill bubble, and like, these were the people, and this is what I know, and this is what I do, and this is where we go, and this is where we vacation. And now I'm like, oh my God, the people that you can meet, the conversations that you can have, the culture that you can absorb. Also really interesting for me as an adult, but also great for the kids to know and to learn from that.
It is so unique, refreshing, somewhat self-fulfilling to hear somebody say what you're thinking, go through the same challenges. We've only been here for a year, so the little things that you now know, you know, those are like behind you, but they were big things at the time.
In the moment,
and we still have like stressors as parents, not having that support network. Like, those are major things. I've talked about on this podcast many times about your impact on your marriage, right? You find out what kind of footing you're on based on the challenges that you now oversee. But when you step out of your comfort zone in almost every aspect of your life, and you go into the places that are like most scary, is where once you start to move past it, you find some incredible things about yourself, your relationships, the people around you. I will argue I lost my father right before COVID started. Opened up my.
Sorry.
You know what? I feel like he checked out right in time, because I would have then made the lockdowns, the neighbors, the all that bullshit. I would have had to make a choice between seeing my newborn child and I had two kids at that time. So a newborn. He didn't even go to the hospital. I had to drive him by to see the kid right pre-COVID, because he couldn't go into the hospital. He was immunocompromised, and I would have had to make a choice, because I was primary to his healthcare, between seeing him. Oh my God. And seeing my family.
I actually just got chills. That's crazy.
And you know how fucked up that was, right? Because you had to bubble and you couldn't. God. And then we were so scared. So he checked out right before, and I look at, in hindsight, all the challenges that we've been through and how much better we are off for it. Do I have sleepless nights? All the time. I have to somewhat reinvent myself, like on the real estate side. Yeah. In my little neck of the woods in Thornhill in Toronto, I was the guy. Like, you know, people knew who I was. I had a steady stream of business.
100%.
I had a team working for me. They still do. Now I'm here. You know, I have very common conversations with people that are looking to buy here. And it's more along the lines of an escape hatch in case things happen again.
You never know.
Right? And I cannot tell you how I didn't vote for the current government. I don't have any love for the current government in every aspect of my life. If COVID wasn't the only reason, it's what's happening in the education front in Canada right now.
Oh my.
That I would have yanked my kids out of school so fast and really thought about homeschooling. Like, it would have been a real consideration. And I know that we have mutual friends that my kids went to a school named Bialik.
Yep.
That just had a major incident.
Yep.
In my opinion, where you had 9 pages, like 400 signatures of family, because an LGBTQ book inappropriate for kindergarten kids was circulating.
Yep. My kids went to Bialik.
They did?
Yeah.
Okay, so look at that. How do we didn't cross paths? I don't know. I mean, eventually I'm going to start, like, offline. I'm going to be like, do you know this girl?
We could play 6 Degrees.
Do you know Galit? Do you know this?
I know Galit.
Oh, you do? Okay. Galit Babitsky?
Yeah. Of course.
So after my long-term relationship was the first girl I went out with. As this is going on like, I don't know, 15 years ago.
Oh my God.
Sweetheart of a girl.
The best.
One of the best humans that I actually
Shout out Galit.
Yeah. And she was teaching at Toronto Heschel School.
Yes.
And my wife was working in the Heschel School.
Oh, no.
And when I went on my first date with my wife, my wife asked Galit, do you know Ronan Fishman? And Galit said, you're going to love him.
Aww.
And now my wife.
Oh my God.
That's how.
Shidduch.
Yeah, right?
I love that.
So I'm sure we know the same people. So Bialik had a situation now, and I know like a lot of families that have pulled their kids.
Me too.
And now they're going to either Associated, but there's really nowhere to hide. I mean, Associated, I think, seems to be the last saving grace. But there is something in the water, and I don't get it, between Bill C-18, between this education front. Like, I don't get it. What do you think's going down?
You know, I honestly, I think something is going down. I agree. I think that the perspective on who you want to be attracted to, or who you want to sleep with, or what you want to do behind closed doors, honestly, I don't care. I don't think anybody should care. And I also don't think that it is an adolescent or child conversation to be had.
Sure.
There is an appropriate time and place for a young adolescent to begin learning. My perspective, my opinion, don't at me, people. But I'm telling you, there's a certain time and place, a certain age that I feel like has been appropriate for decades. And now all of that went kaboom. And so you want to be LGBTQ plus any other letter in the alphabet?
Be what you want to be.
Cool.
Yeah.
I am with you. I am supporting you.
I'm not.
But I
not
don't care.
Fighting you either.
Exactly. Like, I don't care either way. Just don't shove it down my kid's throat unnecessarily. And for me as a parent, as a mama bear, I will protect my kids at all costs. And again, the decision to move here was, highlighted as even more correct once I saw some of the literature that was being shared in these schools, my kids' old school specifically, that I felt personally very uncomfortable with. I would not want my children to see that. And so as a result, I think there is this liberal freedom of visuals and perspectives that I think is simply pop culture. It's cool to say that. It's cool to be a furry. It's cool to be woke.
Furry.
Yeah, you want to be a cat? Meow meow. Like, cool, no probs. But I do think it's a mental illness piece or a seeking attention piece. But again, that's my perspective. And if you identify as a cat or a dog or a horse or a unicorn, cool. But I just don't think that is something that needs to be shared. I actually saw an Instagram reel, and it was super interesting because it was people now introducing each other to their friends. So
I saw the same
It was
thing.
like, hi, Jason, I am, Jennifer, vegetarian, bipolar, lesbian, quintessential furry. And it went on and on and on. And you're just like, can I just say, hi, my name is Nicole. Nice to meet you.
Right.
Like, why do I need to tell you who I sleep with before you even get to know what my favorite color is or what my favorite food is? I just think we're going a little far in terms of how exposed we're making ourselves and our society. And so I mean, I have several friends who are gay, who are lesbian, who actually have shared with me that they actually feel uncomfortable being represented by people who are so kind of loose with their sexuality and who expose themselves freely like that. So there are so many varying opinions. But what I will say is that I'm on the side of just protecting the innocence of our children.
Sure. I think it's a very good way to put it, where in sexual orientation and that sort of stuff is like, fine. Like, there's acceptance in the world. No one's walking around with pitchforks and knives. and hurting people to harm them.
Absolutely.
In fact, I think the places that are most open to letting people do what they want to do are the places that are getting the most flack for being not woke enough. Because the most ironic thing is that if you go to the places in the world, and there are many, where it's like against the law to be transgendered, or it's against the law to teach those things, like people would be hurt, arrested, treated like absolute animals, and no one is saying a word against those places,
right? Because
it's not, because there's repercussions,
right?
The places that are like this whole woke movement has been an overcorrection, and I think that we're in the midst of a mental health epidemic with platforms like social media that allow people to do what they want, and there's nothing wrong with having an opinion, but you cannot and will not enforce this on the kids. That's where the line was drawn in Canada. Statistically, more people have said, okay, done. We're done with this. And when the vaccine started rolling out for kids, we came back from Dominican, did our 2 weeks quarantine. Kids were going back to Bialik. We had this whole info session with medical experts, parents and students. And in the irony, anyone who had any opinion, even in the medical sphere, that was contrary to the vaccines, they were outed, fired, canceled, whatever. Yep. They were going to do a vaccine clinic in Bialik, and we're like, nope, kids out of school, bye, pull them. And that was the last of it. If I didn't do it then, I would have done it now with this whole, LGBTQ. I don't even know what to call it. The alphabet people thing. It's like, I don't know. Can't keep up with it anymore. I am grateful for you being on the podcast. You are an incredible human. Oh, you have a really good vibe and energy to you. How can people find you and get information on the Health Collective?
Well, thank you so much for having me. I've had such a great time here. You can find me at healthcollective_MIA for Miami, or you can find me at Nicole Pekerman, or you can just Google us, and we're at healthcollective.us.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was fun.
We'll do this again.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Bye.